and I had to learn how to heal.
So tell us what happened.
Well, life gave me a very strong tragedy. My youngest daughter was killed by a drunk driver on my birthday in 2011, and she was a single mom. Her name was Lily Tunkin. Lily was one of those people that she was kind of the life of the party. You could hear her laughing from a block away, and she was a singer, and she had a beautiful voice. She had that deep, raspy voice. Have you ever heard Black Velvet?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, she could deliver that like no tomorrow.
Wow.
And the last time I got to see her was when she was leaving, and it was on my birthday evening. And I sang "You Are My Sunshine" to her.
Aww.
And I held her real tight, and she said, "Mom, you're singing in my ear." I said, "I know." And she left. Her daughter stayed with me for my birthday weekend because my other two grandchildren were already living with me. So they wanted to have a good time. So my husband and I went to bed, and we could hear them laughing downstairs.
Yes.
And that's what you want life to be. So life was really wonderful. At 4:30 in the morning, my phone rang. I ignored it the first time. Second time it rang, my husband said, "You need to get up and answer the phone." The phone call ended up being for him, and I handed the phone to my husband because it was my brother, and he said, "I need to speak to Rick." So then I handed the phone to him. He got up, got dressed, left the room really quick, and he comes back in a few minutes later, and he says, "Diana, I have something to tell you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You need to sit up and listen." And he said, "Something's happened to Lily." I couldn't wrap my brain around it.
Shock, right?
It was more than shock. It was like this, it wasn't my kid. It was somebody else. But then they brought her effects to me, and I even wear her ring to this day that represents me, her, and her child. So that was on her when she passed away, so I wear it every day.
Yes.
And that tells me that she's with me all the time.
Yes.
But when I found out that my child had died, I lost my mind.
Yes.
I didn't know who I could turn to, because she and I were so close.
Yeah.
I mean, we were best friends.
Do you have other children?
I have one older child.
Okay.
And
How far apart were they?
2 years.
2 years apart. Oh, were they pretty close, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And my oldest daughter is getting ready to turn 48 here in next week. So 1 week from today.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting. Happy to see her still here.
Yes.
but you know, I had to go through the process of, putting pictures together so people could see those.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that through tears. I had to give a eulogy, which I gave through tears.
Wow. That's impressive that you could do that.
I didn't want anybody else to do the primary, so others got up, but I could tell her story best.
Yes.
And, because I had been with her, for 31 years, we were, best buddies. And she was just a lot like me.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just blended well. And watching her grow was really important. I learned how to be a better mom and a grandmother. This was my first grandchild.
Yes.
She was one that was born so small.
Yeah.
But when I had to explain to her child why her mommy smelled funny, why mommy, was so cold.
So pause right there. So did you have to bring your granddaughter in to view her mother?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And that was the last time she had seen her mom. She was alive. And she said, "I'll see you on Monday. I love you. Be safe."
Yeah.
And then the next time she saw her, she was in a box, in the funeral home.
Yeah.
But because she had already lost her dad when she was 8, and then her mom when she was 12, her paternal grandparents didn't include her in, anything until after her father had been, cremated. So in order for somebody to have closure, they have to have the whole message.
Yes.
And for my granddaughter, she didn't have that full closure for her dad, so I had to give it to her for her mom, because she needed to be able to really see, so that she could, allow that process to be complete.
Wow.
So that's why
That must have been tough.
it was, because she went in. My husband actually took her into the viewing room, and she put one little tiny finger on, through my husband's hands to touch her mom, and that's how she knew she was cold. But she couldn't touch her mom, because that's not how she remembered her mom.
Yes.
But it's how she had to close that memory of a living parent,
Right.
to be, memories that she had, before that moment. For both of us, it was more prevention, because she was cutting, and she was talking about just wanting to be with her mom. She cried every night for months and months.
Wow.
And she didn't get much sleep, and then she started school shortly after that. And for me, it was, I wanted to commit suicide more times than you can imagine, because I couldn't imagine living my life without being a full mother. I was half a mom now.
Yes, right.
And
now a grandma, full-time.
Yep. So I couldn't commit suicide, because I knew what I had just gone through, and I didn't want everybody else to go through that, but it was still always in my mind.
Yes.
And I couldn't shake it, because it's like God failed me. He let my child die. And the world failed me. So I just became an angry monster.
Tell our listeners, what is the best tools that you were able to use to go through the mourning process and come out on the end positively?
The hardest thing about being in grief is understanding that you don't have to walk that path alone. When you are in grief, you are working with a wound that you're not sure how to heal it, because it's more of an internal wound. You start experiencing pain in a lot of different places, in your head, in your chest, in your stomach, and sometimes throughout your entire body. But the most important thing you have to understand is that this is life, this is living. And even though someone has passed away, it is not impossible to continue living with that wound. You have to learn how to heal the wound. And you do that through personal support, such as counseling, good therapy, talking to your friends, to your family, creating memories that allow you to be able to embrace your grief differently. It's very difficult to understand why, but this is life. Life is nothing but lessons in wounds and scars. We have to turn those wounds into scars that allow us to live forward. Because for me, I allowed my wounds to stay opened and unable to heal for over 7 years. And then my oldest daughter said to me, "Mom, don't you see me anymore?" and I didn't. And the reason I didn't see her is because I allowed the grief to blind me, but I didn't understand how I could, move forward.
Yeah, how could you get out of that?
Right. And it wasn't until she said, "Mom, don't you see me anymore?" that I was able to feel something.
How were you able to, once, that's amazing that you were able to start looking at resources, starting to glean from others who walk the same journey. What advice would you have? How were you able to put it into action? Because it's one thing to watch something and it's another thing to put it into action. So how were you able to do that?
Sometimes when people ask me that question, I don't really know how to answer it, because I know, because inside we don't want to say, "Oh, well, I was so vulnerable and this happened and that happened." We learn how to adapt because we want to have a change.
Yes.
And it's like after a divorce, you're down pretty hard.
Yes.
But then you learn to build from there. And I got a lot of support from my husband, but I had to find the fortitude to build me back.
Yes.
And I took it one step at a time. And I'm a self-assessor. So I read my books and I had to pay attention to how I was, reacting to something. So I had to take the reaction and figure out if it was emotional or if it was, more intellectual aspect. So I have shut a lot of my family out because I hurt them. And I hurt them in ways that I never intended.
Right.
And I've asked for forgiveness, and some of them have forgiven me.
Yes.
But, I had to examine myself and realize that you can't make people love you.
Right.
You can't make people behave a certain way. But in order for me to heal, I had to set aside the emotional part of who I was and look at it intellectually and say, this is what you need to do. And trust started coming back. I started trusting myself again.
That's huge.
And
because you started listening to yourself and obeying yourself.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yes. So, life is filled with scars.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to choose which scars we want to, have in front of us and, live with that.
Yes.
But some scars, we just need to leave it behind.
So tell us about your books.
I am writing a fantasy novel.
Okay.
And it is back in the days where they had horses and little villages. And the book is about a man that right off the bat in chapter 1, his family is burned in a fire.
Oh. And
he becomes very angry, and he has magic spirits that he calls upon. And that's like what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then in chapter 2, I have the buildup of a story of a bunch of young people learning to actually adventure in finding the crystals and the stones to keep this guy from being such a bad guy. So the protagonist in this is like my granddaughter.
Ah, okay.
She has to learn how to navigate, and she has to find the ways for her to have a better life. So, but in the end, she does learn to live forward, and she takes her journeys. And the bad guy, which is me, ends up, kind of going away. But the book is filled with spiders and leviathans and leeches and dragons, just it's a wonderful story. I've had people tell me, send me the next chapter, send me the next one. But, it includes people that are of different age ranges. It shows wisdom, it shows intelligence, it shows choice making, just a wide variety of things. And,
so is this your first book?
that's the book that I created because I could not tell the story of losing my daughter right off the bat. So I've been writing this book for a long time.
Okay.
And I'm finally into the second book. So I have 20 chapters, and it's probably close to 250,000 words.
So it's a taste of your past put into fiction.
Yes.
Wow, that must. I've heard about resilience writing, and that is an incredible twist to it, because then it may not hurt as much because you have a fictional character, right? So you're able to be more creative with it.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I created the logo because the blue in the iris is my daughter's eye color, and the lips are for my granddaughter. And for my podcast, when I do the video streaming, I'm going to have her sitting in the back. I'm going to have my iPad sitting on my shelf.
Yeah.
And she's going to be my silent co-host, and she's going to be blinking.
Oh, I love it.
And her name is Iris.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
So she's going to be, like my silent co-host. And
that's cool. So are you going to have guests on your podcast, or is it just? Oh, you are?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have my office is set up in my home.
Wonderful.